This is the Garden of English. I'm Tim Freitas, and today we are going to go hunting for unicorns. Yes, we're going to talk about things that you can do to increase sophistication in your AP English essays. So, stay tuned. Alright, as I start this video, I would like to just point out that although I am going to direct you to go to the Perfection Learning Facebook page eventually, this video is not sponsored by Perfection. What I'm doing right now is I'm actually giving a quick hits of something that I did for Perfection that will be presented on their Facebook page starting on January 19th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 2021. And so if you're interested in what I'm doing here, this is just a quick hits. They're going to go into much greater detail starting on the 19th on the videos that are on their Facebook page. And you can actually access that Facebook page at the link right down below. That link is not an affiliate link. I am not getting any monetary compensation from that. I'm not getting any monetary compensation for this video. We're just trying to be transparent here. However, I will tell you that I was compensated for the videos that we made for Perfection. Okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink up here. We'll make that a little bit smaller. This is just, hey, here's what we're doing for Perfection. I made videos with my friend Lauren here, who actually is also affiliated with the Garden of English as well, by the way. We'll see if we can get her into some Garden of English videos pretty soon. But it's looking at how to write for perfection. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you through just some of the quick things that we're exploring in much greater detail in those videos that are going to be released as of January 19th, 2021. So anyway, one of the things that we did was we went through the sophistication criteria, particularly for the AP language rubrics, and we pulled out the text that consistently showed up for sophistication. Now, this is by no means a checklist. You can't just say, if I do all of these things, I'll get the sophistication. You can do one of these things to get the sophistication. But the hardest part about all of this is that sophistication is an abstraction. And as we say, what can I do to get that sophistication point? A lot of times it's a combination of things, of doing things well. And it's very hard to make a concrete kind of treasure map to find the way to sophistication. So I'm going to give you some pointers of things that you can do that can collectively increase your chances of earning this point that's based on something pretty abstract. There is no checklist for it. This is just things that you can do when appropriate. So here's what's up. I want to point out that here's where we kind of looked to see things going on. We want to look for, when we write, we want to look for nuance. We want to look for complexity and tension for when we read and when we write ourselves. We want to look at the implications or limitations of arguments that we're reading or we're producing. We want to situate things in a broader context. We want to make effective rhetorical choices. We want to try to adopt language that's vivid and persuasive. And once again, let's go back to that complexities and tensions because that's mentioned all the time. So today I'm going to give you some quick tips on how to deal with all of that. And then, like I said, if you want to explore this more, tune into the Perfection Facebook page starting January 19th, 2021. So let's look at this idea of tension and complexity, right? When we look for tension and complexity, when we read or when we're writing, how can I actually do this? Well, tension and complexity comes from your understanding of reading before writing. So what do we want to do? When you read anything, you want to read for tensions or complexities so that you can then write about those as you have to analyze it or incorporate it into your own writing. So what does that actually mean? How do I read for complexity? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to look for layers. And what that means is you want to say, okay, what positions are being presented by a piece? And then what perspectives are being presented by a piece? Now, those are different. A position is a person's argument. A perspective is all of the background that informs that argument. And I've mentioned this before. I might have the same position that I want my child to be well when I bring him to the doctors, but my perspective is from a parent and my doctor's is from a medical professional. But we still have the same position. We want my children or my child to be well. So when I'm reading, I want to look for that complexity where I'm like, wow, this author might actually be introducing a new perspective that agrees with a position. Okay, so now we see how this builds, right? Or a new perspective that actually complements this position. And we want to look for that, and we want to be able to say, okay, what happens when the author does that, and how can that affect how I create my own ideas when I have to write about this? So that's one of the ways that you can address complexity when you look for kind of those elements of agreement, support, and complement as you read and try to put that in your writing. Now, let's talk about tension though, because this is actually a little bit easier to do. There are two ways to look for tension while you read, and then also try to account for that while you write. The first one is you want to look for elements of irony. So you're looking for contrasting expectations between from what the author or the writer is trying to suggest in their argument and the expectations of the audience. And if you notice that there are some elements of tension there, that's what you're going to want to write about. There seems to be some irony here because the author is presenting this idea and the author, the audience does not necessarily agree with that from what I know about the audience. You're going to want to account for that in your commentary. If you can get little non-essential words, I should say clauses and phrases in that account for those little elements of irony, you're going to be in good shape. Also, if the author desires something that the audience does not desire, try to account for that. And you could think about that for yourself too. If you know that there's some potential animosity between you and your audience based on your argument, right? Express your desire, recognize that the audience might expect something different, and then try to reason through why the audience should change their mind. That's going to be addressing some tension there. The next thing that we want to read for is if we're reading an argument, because they're not necessarily always perfect, you can look for logical fallacies and contradictions. And if you can expose that, you can even say, this right here is purposeful in this way, even though it happens to be a logical fallacy. If you're doing a rhetorical analysis, don't always call the author out on it with anything besides a potential small little non-essential. But that is indeed sophisticated. If you notice, here's how it functions, even though it probably shouldn't, but the audience wouldn't recognize it. That's a sophisticated move. Don't go searching for that, though, because that is really hard to do, extremely sophisticated. And once again, this is not a checklist. All right. What does it mean to situate things within a broader context? How can I do it? Well, there are two ways you can do it in the grand sense, and that is your intro paragraph and your conclusion. Now, for me and my students, I am a full advocate of writing just your thesis as your intro paragraph for your timed write. And I still think you can situate things within a broader context, even if you don't write a full intro paragraph. But if you do write a full intro paragraph, you have a much better chance of doing so. So if your teacher says, hey, please make sure that you write a full intro, listen to your teacher here. I teach my kids to create that broader context primarily in their commentary and their conclusions. But if you're not doing that in your classroom, the intro and conclusion can really help here. So what do you want in order to create a broader context in your intro paragraphs? What do you want to do? Well, you want to engage your audience, okay? And there are plenty of ways to actually do that. In fact, I've got some intro paragraph videos myself that give you options, but also once again on the 19th, if you tune into the Facebook page of Perfection, they will give you plenty of options as well. You can pause the screen there and you can copy down those options. The next thing that you also want to do in your intro paragraph is show your knowledge of history and culture. That's so important. So as you engage and get into your argument, tell us why contextually this argument is important right now. Really try to expose that before you put your thesis on there, and that's going to help create some broader context. And then what you want to do is in your conclusion, you want to continue to build that broader context. One of the ways you could do so is to connect back to your intro, not by summarizing your intro, but maybe you're going to extend an extended metaphor, or maybe you're going to extend the ideas from the intro, not just repeat what you've already written in your paper. Another thing that you could do in your conclusion to kind of show that broader context is connect your argument to the present day. If you're arguing about something that's a little bit more in the past, especially if you're doing a rhetorical analysis, you could also project your argument into the future. If your argument's engaged or embraced, what would it look like in the future? Or you can call people to action. So these are ways to situate things within a broader context. You're going to want to make sure that you do that. And if you can do that well, you are on your way to actually capturing that unicorn and getting that sophistication point. Now, another way we can do this is by making effective rhetorical choices. What is the easiest way to make effective rhetorical choices? I'm going to tell you, knowing your methods of development. Now, there are actually typically, depending on who you talk to, up to 9 methods of development. You're going to notice that there are 5 here on the screen. That actually comes from the book, once again, that I co-authored with Brandon Abden and Lauren Peterson through Perfection Learning. I do have permission to use this page here, right? Narration, cause and effect, compare and contrast, definition, description, and there are other ones like exemplification, classification and division, and so forth, right? One of the ways that you can make your writing more sophisticated is to actually apply your knowledge of these methods of development to your own writing. So instead of just going off and writing, make conscious choices. I want to narrate an example here. I want to produce a cause and effect relationship between these two paragraphs. I want to define something first so that everybody knows the foundations for my reasoning. This is key because it means that you are making choices about how you're presenting your writing, and that's something that you absolutely want to do. The next best way to also make sure that you're incorporating your methods of development into your papers is by looking at particularly argument and synthesis prompts and saying to yourself, what is the best method of development to actually encourage how to answer this paper? And that's really, really, really important. I think about a couple years ago, there was a prompt about, developing a creativity class in a high school and whether or not that should be done. And think about that as cause and effect, which is not on the screen here, but it is a method of development, right? If we cause a new class to be built, what would the effects be on the student body, on the school budget? I mean, you could really use that method of development purposefully to create the structure of your essay and make it really awesome. So that's another way you can, once again, try to capture that unicorn. All right. Our last one here is generating that vivid and persuasive style. What are some ways that you can do this? Little quick tips here, right? How do I make it vivid? How do I make it persuasive? Well, number one is you can vary your sentence structures, but you need to do it purposefully. You don't want to just say, I want a long sentence, I want a short sentence, I want a long sentence. No. You want to talk about simple sentences, compound sentences, and complex sentences. And you want to know why you're using what when. A simple sentence, one subject and verb. A compound sentence has two equal clauses. It's called a coordinated sentence. A complex sentence has a subordinate clause. Another way that you can build your persuasive style or make it more vivid is to actually understand and incorporate advanced punctuation. Use semicolons, colons, and dashes correctly. Now, don't think that if you know how to use these, excellent, good for you. If you don't, go look it up. You do not want to use these incorrectly because when you use them well, you look brilliant. But when you use them incorrectly, you look dumb. And even if we are dumb, we don't want to look dumb on our AP exam. And don't worry, none of y'all are dumb, so I'm just joking around. But nonetheless, if we can use advanced punctuation consistently and purposefully well, then it's going to really help us as we work to earn that sophistication point. Now, the last thing that we want to look at is the nuanced argument. Okay, you can have your argument or produce an argument that is nuanced, and there are different ways that you can do that. The first way you can do it is to qualify your argument if the argument allows. Sometimes arguments don't really allow for qualification, right? But one of the ways that you can do this, or sometimes qualification might make your argument weaker, but one of the ways that you can do this is use less absolute language, right? If you're telling your parents, oh, you never let me out, and your parents respond with, I just let you out to walk the dog, right? At that point, they have proven you wrong. But if you say, Mom, it never seems like you let me out, it seems like you never let me out to go out with my friends, when you put that word seems there, you can definitely say, I know that you do let me out to go see my friends, but it seems like it's almost never. And now your argument is actually stronger. So we want to think about getting qualified language there. Also, you can work on conceding in your argument. A concession is saying, yes, this part of the other side's argument is absolutely true. So we're going to just say, hey, here's your credit for that, but here's where my argument changes. And if you can incorporate a strong concession into your argument, that could help you with nuance, but only if your argument allows, right? A concession is not appropriate for an argument prompt that says, argue your position on the relationship between certainty and doubt. What are you going to concede in that argument? Probably nothing. I don't even know what you would concede. So once again, this is not a checklist where you do all of these things. You need to say, which ones of these tips can I apply given the circumstance that's right in front of me? The next thing you could do to make an argument nuanced is to offer rebuttals and refutations, once again, if the argument allows. Some arguments don't have any space for refutations or rebuttals. That's okay. And so please note that you really want to look into that. Also, if you don't know what the difference is between a rebuttal and a refutation, you're going to want to tune in on the 19th at 7:30 as we begin to show those sorts of videos. In fact, actually, I think the nuanced argument is the video that's going to be projected as of 7:30 p.m. on the 21st. I'm going to actually make myself full screen here again. And I'm going to, once again, encourage you to tune into that Facebook page, even though I just said so. Also, if this video has been helpful in any sense, I'm always going to ask that you help us out here at the Garden of English by just pressing like and subscribe. That's the easiest way to help us out. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram. We also have Pinterest and TikTok available now, but I'm not going to put those icons up right now as we speak. And I hope that you have the opportunity to look into at least one of these elements that could potentially help you score the sophistication point when you write your essays. And until our next video, I hope you all have a great one.